Hi guys, in today's video we will be looking at this pre-grouping locomotive by Rapido UK, and this is a NRM exclusive at the time, and this is on the Gnr Stirling single, and it's a DCC ready model. This is from the first batch of the models that were announced around 2017 time. The product code you need for this one is 449366, and this is era 2, so it's pre-grouping. At the moment, this model goes for silly amounts of money. Luckily, Rapido UK have announced a new version of these with a new tender. So in this review, I will show you what you can expect from the models that are due to come out, and should Rapido improve any of the areas, or is it, in my opinion, the holy grail of 00 locomotives. So here goes. Let's get into the video, shall we? So as we start on the detail part of this Stirling single, I will just mention the box. It was the first box I had that was hard, and it had the foam lining inside, and that was 5 years ago when I got the model. So I thought I'd just mention that. But what you do get is 2 bags of details and a booklet. So in the first bag you get some silver discs. I'm not quite sure what they are for. They could be like add-on caps for the piping, and I'm not too sure, so I do apologise. In the second bag you get quite a bit. So you get 2 different styles of couplers. You get the usual NEM one for the front and back of the locomotive, and I believe you get a continental style one as well to go with it. You also get, looks like, some add-on splashes, some piping. They look to be metal with chain links and hooks to add yourself. Again, some more piping to add, and it looks like some more splasher detail too. But in the booklet, it's a massive green booklet with Stirling single on the front with this one big wheel. Inside it, you get a little bit of history from the National Rail Museum. Then you also get, read this bit first, and it tells you where to handle the locomotive. Please do not touch the rods. So you hold it from the cab, this splasher, and also you can hold it from the front of the cylinders as well. Please be very careful. I will put a picture up where they recommend you to hold it. Then on the next few pages you get the Stirling single DCC function quick reference. You also get the history again, unboxing your model. You also get how the loco and tender clips together. I think it's an 8-pin clip, and it goes into a socket on the locomotive or tender. It does the job. I like it. And then you get a bit about the splashes. If you want to run yours on second radius bends, you have to move the splashers. Just giving that warning out there. But it is made for third or higher as it comes out the box. Then you get some hints about running in and adding your details and where they belong and what to do. Also, to install a DCC decoder. There is, by the sounds of it or looks of it, there is a speaker in the tender with a few holes at the bottom of the tender. Then you get how to take the shell off for the DCC fitting and operational, all that sort of stuff, and you get the functions, the massive list of functions, and what to do if it doesn't work to troubleshoot it. And then you get about the volume, how to change the volume of certain things, factory reset, and it also says awesome slow speed thing, highly recommend. I'm not quite sure what that's to do with. I think it's again more settings. Then you get missing or damaged parts, where to contact. So you get two addresses to contact. One is Rapido Trains, and another one is Rapido Trains as well. One is SH Model Making, and one is Rapido Trains Inc. So I'm guessing that's the Canadian one. But I'm guessing with the new one coming out, I think with the old one you still possibly could ring Rapido up in Kent. And then on the back page it's green like the front. Moving now on to the front of this fabulous looking locomotive. At the front we do get metal sprung buffers. We also get, I think, a place for your NEM pocket coupler at the front, because there's 2 couplers in the bag. Technically there's 3 couplers in the bag. So unless the 2 spare for the back, I'm unsure. We also get black buffer shanks, which is correct for the model. We also get the buffer beam in red. It could have a possible lining around the outside in a yellow. We have 2 lots of hooks in the centre. I do believe Rapido or the National Rail Museum did send some spare ones out. And we also have a few holes on the buffer beam for your detail parts. Like I said, the chains at the front do come already applied to the locomotive. Moving on up, this is where it gets a little interesting for me. The locomotive itself, or the engine and boiler, are set further back than usual locomotives I'm used to reviewing on this channel. So we have quite a long gap which has 4 lamp irons on there. It also has a ton of rivets. Everywhere you look, there's rivets on that bit of the locomotive. We also have some lining on the supports for the boiler as well. And if you look closely, you can see the cylinders, which are silver from the front facing ones. We have picked out handrails, which are metal. I believe the dart is metal. And then we have painted supports and hinges for the smoke box door. And then, not forgetting, we have the big chimney that this loco is known for. As we now do a side-on view of this locomotive, both sides to me are exactly the same. I can't find any difference between them. So let's start for a second to appreciate the curves and lines of this locomotive. It looks fabulous. So the wheel configuration for this locomotive is a 4-2-2. We have one massive driving wheel, which I think was 6 foot 7 inches. I believe the rods and stuff are metal. The only thing I have to say about the model wheel configuration is hopefully Rapido will cover up the axles on the wheels, because the shiny metal here, silver. That's the only downfall I have. This is in the Great Northern Apple Green or Doncaster Green. I forget which one it is. We do have a grate around the big driving wheel, which you can see through if you look closely enough, or I get some better photos. Between the last pony wheel and the big wheel, if you look closely enough, you can see some picked out cylinder work in there. I believe it's red. Hopefully I should be able to get a good enough photo for you guys to see. Also down on the chassis, we have some lining around them curves, and there's a few steps everywhere you look. The red things between the drive wheel and the cab, I believe they are for the copper things or the metal discs you get in your detail bags to add on top. We have a handrail which is shiny metal. We have another handrail below that going into the big wheel, which could be the reverser. I don't know, I have not managed to find one. We do have some lining which is white, black and white, if you have that correct. We do have some safety valves and bonnets. They're not as good as they are today on some of the models, but they're there and they look a little dull, if I'm honest with you. We also have the number 1 by the cab. We have some metal grab rails for the crew, and then we have some lining around the step. There is also lining around the cab. The cab is very open on this model. And if you look closely enough, there's no dome. But everywhere you look, there's a lot of detail on this model. As we now move to the part in a Steam review that everyone looks forward to in a modern day locomotive, and that is the cab features and details. So yeah, straight off the bat, this model, even though it's about 7 years old at the time of me recording, this does have a flickering firebox or a glow on analog, which is a great touch. We also have a lot of stuff in there painted and picked out. We have water gauge, we have dials. Most things in there are painted. We also have glazing as well, which I don't think is a bar. I think it's simply applied. Again, I think we have a wood effect floor as well. The metal floor plate does move up and down between tender and the locomotive. So most things in there are painted really well and really crisp. But it's going to be because it is an open cab. As we now move to the front of the tender, like I said, the floor plate does move up and down. We have, which looks like to be a chest on top of the tender. We have a place for, I think it's the water or coal to transfer from one to the other, from tender to loco. We also have a few cupboards, handrails, and I think there is a chute there as well. I do understand that Rapido are tooling up for another variant of the tender, but differently. So yeah, this is a highly detailed front of the tender and cab. As we now move on to the side of the tender, both sides of the tender are exactly the same. They're going to be, it's a tender. Like I said before, we do have handrails either side of the tender, and the ones nearest the cab are picked out in silver. We have the crisply lined GNR with the correct font on the tender as well. The outside of the tender, I believe, is in a dark green. Then we have some lining, which I think is white, black and white, and then we have the apple green in the centre. And Rapido have done this quite well actually, no issues there. The coal rail around the outside of the tender is made of rubber, so when you squeeze it, it bounces back. That's a great touch, so you don't break if you're heavy-handed. We also have some line steps on the tender as well. We also have some axle boxes and springs and supports for the underneath of the tender again. They are lined in red and black, and I believe we have metal wheels as well. It's quite a basic tender to describe, but that's what it is. As we now do a look at the back of the tender, we do have the coupling already applied at the back of the tender. We also have some metal sprung buffers. Again, it's like the front of the locomotive. We have the buffer beam shanks or buffer shanks in black. And then the buffer itself is in red with a lining. I believe there is some holes for detailed differences. Like I said, the buffers are sprung and they are metal. Moving on up, I think we have 3 lamp irons down below. I'm not too sure if they are separately applied or moulded on. We have the dark green, white, black, white lining and then apple green in the centre. Then near the top of that, we also have a separately applied, or it's part of the moulding, but it definitely sticks out, another lamp iron. And then we have the funky coal rail, which I said was rubber, and it just bounces back so you can touch it. It's quite easy to touch. As we now do an aerial look on top of the tender, again we have the water filler cap, and the area around the water filler cap is in black. Like I said before, the coal rails around the outside are made of rubber, which are great, and they are separately applied. The coal load itself is metal. We have 2 prongs in the middle of the coal, which I believe was for to check the water or check something. People have told me, and I keep forgetting, I do apologise. The coal load itself isn't too bad actually. Like I said, it could be removable. It is made of metal. Most of the tender is made of metal. We have that cupboard or box that I mentioned, and we have a half moon thing, I believe is for some of the fireman's tools. So for the water, I'm guessing. But overall, it's a nice looking coal. I probably haven't done it any justice. And as we do an aerial view on top of the locomotive, let's start in the usual place, which is the cab roof. The cab roof is in a mixture of different colours. It's in the dark green, then it's got the lining, white, black and white, apple green, and then it's lining and dark green again. This is quite an open cab, and I'm guessing it was very harsh on the crew. Like I said before, we have the handrails either side, and we also have the foreplate which does move. As you move across a bit, like I mentioned earlier, the safety bonnet valve does look cheap on this model. It's the only criticism I have apart from the actual showing on the actual locomotive. Hopefully Rapido will tool this up to be better or improve it. And then we have a whistle. I think the whistle behind is actually metal. As we move along, you can see these big wheels either side. There is no dome on the boiler. Again, we have the apple green and we have the lining, which is done quite well. We have these metal shiny handrails all the way around the model, and it just looks superb. Then we come to the tall chimney on the Stirling single. I believe you can put a smoke unit in it and it will smoke out. If you look either side of the chimney, you can see the steps for the crew to climb on across the cylinders. And then we come to the front of the locomotive again. I said it is quite far away from the buffers, and you can see the 4 lamp irons and a few lots of rivets and supports as well. And then we get to the buffers. So now, as we do an underneath look at this model, you can see before the front bogie wheels, we do have some metal guard irons to knock stuff off the tracks. I did forget to mention them at the start, but they are there and they come with the model already applied. You can see the bogie wheels we have. Again, these are metal wheels. The only thing I don't like about the wheels in general is the axles are not painted green like the locomotive. Just behind that, you can see the cylinder work, the red gubbins for the locomotive. That is there, and that's a great touch from Rapido. Then we have the big driving wheel, and I believe it's the big driving wheel and the wheel underneath the cab that drives this model. Because when you push it along, them two do not go round, so I'm guessing they're the ones that drive it. I won't be taking off the base plate because I don't want to break the model in any way, but between the big driving wheel and the wheels underneath the cab, you can see some more of the piping and stuff in red. We do have at least some pickups on the small wheels underneath the cab. I believe there's possibly is some on the big wheels, but I just can't see it. And we also have the brake mechanism as well around the wheels too. I will apologise if I've missed anything or forgotten anything wrong. I do apologise. And finally, we come to the loco and tender connection. The loco and tender connection on this is actually a fantastic one. Like I said before, I think it's 8 pins that you push together and they clip, a bit like Dapple's design. And I have never taken mine apart whatsoever in the 5 or 6 years I've had it. Runs perfectly well, no issues, and it looks the part. It looks smart. So that's the loco and tender connection. It does the job for me, and I like it. We already have the brake rigging applied to the tender. We also have a few holes under there for a speaker. If you want to have the speaker and other stuff, you have to take the tender top off. Maybe Rapido will change this in the latest ones that are due out. I believe we do have 6 locks of pickups on the tender wheels. They're really high up in the tender. I can't really get a good photo of them, but there's a lot of copper strips under there and they are for the tender. Personally, it doesn't need it. And we also have the coupling at the end. One thing I do want to say, which I have forgot, there's no traction tyres anywhere on this model. And this is a relatively small model compared to some. So it can be done without traction tyres. E.g. the Dean Goods, the LMS single, it can be done without traction tyres. Sorry. So that's it on the tracks. Next it will be something a little bit different, seeing though it can't do second radius in the configuration it is at the moment, the model. I will just test it if it can do the one and only second radius point I have that you'll have to go through. So let's see if we can do the points test, shall we? So here goes. Oh, it made it just. What we're looking at there is 30. Let's see if we can bring it back. Again, they are second radius bends on the points. Yeah, you can manage it just, but I wouldn't recommend it, seeing it says third radius or higher if you've not changed the pony truck underneath the cylinders. So yeah, it managed the points test pretty well, saying it can't do second radius, and I have 1 second radius on the main line, but it managed it pretty well. Next up, let's see if we can couple up to some 4 or 6 wheel coaches from Hattons and Hornby. So here goes. Yeah, no issues whatsoever there. Quite smooth actually, and this is DC ready model. And then at the end we have a Rapido tram coach. So yeah guys, that's the end of the running session and the review. The stock that the Stirling single was pulling was a few Great Northern teak 4/6 wheel coaches from Hattons and Hornby, a few LNER ones as well, and then at the end we had a Rapido LNER tram car. I don't really have that much Great Northern stock. I think I have a Great Northern gunpowder van. That's really about it, bar the coaches. I could have ran Gresley's LNER teak coaches because they were designed by the Great Northern, but I thought I'd just go with 4 and 6 wheel coaches just to see how it looks, and then a tram car at the end just for something a bit different. Like I said at the start, I got mine from the first batch that was released, and I got it from Locomotion Models or NRM, and I paid around 200 and 220. I think it was more 220, but I'm unsure. Like I said, around 2017. Recently, Rapido in their winter announcements 2023 have announced they are re-releasing this model with a different tender than this one, and if you want that version, it's going to cost you around £212.46 from most model shops. Again, it's a great price, and if it is cheaper than what I paid, that's great. But if you were to buy it direct from Rapido themselves, you are talking more £250 for the one with a slightly different tender. I believe if you want this version with this tender, it's from the NRM only, and on their website currently there's no price. At the time of recording, if you were to buy the first batch of this one on most auction sites or model shops, you're talking anywhere between £200 to I've seen it as high as £1,200, and currently Hattons have a few at £800. I personally don't go for preserved locomotives. I try and stay away from them. I was hoping that Rapido would do a different number one instead of doing number one, different members of the class, but they currently don't. Like I said in the review and the detail part, I do wish or I hope that Rapido will cover up the axles on the wheels and make the whistles and safety bonnet a bit more better. I know technology has changed since this first came out, but for me, it's only two things that let it down. It was my first model to have a hard box and frame inside. It was also my first model to have a push fit for the loco and tender. And I did try it on the points, doing the only second radius point I have that you'll have to manage because all the rest are straight. I managed it just, but I wouldn't recommend it unless you change the settings of the wheels. Like I said at the start, this for me is the holy grail of 00 locomotives, models. The amount of detail and how well it runs is simply fantastic. Even with the gubbins inside the engine in red, you can just about see it. It's great. The grate in the wheel is perfect. I have stood next to a Stirling single at the NRM, and I am 6'4", and the wheel was a lot bigger than me. For me, like I said, it is the best model. Would I recommend it to people who want one? It depends on your preference and your price budget. I know there's some out there who have ordered it, and I know there's some of my friends and subscribers who are waiting for this review to make their mind up to give them a flavour of what the locomotive is all about. I'm trying my best not to be biased to the model. Whatever lists I do with my top locomotives, this is always number one, and nothing has come close to beating it. And I think it'll be that way for a while. The W1 didn't beat it, the Streamline King didn't beat it, the Hornby 9F new tooled nearly beat it, but it didn't. And the lines and the printing and the metalwork is superb. Like I said, Rapido went into a lot of trouble with this. Same with the APT that they did. Again, fantastic model. Not my thing, but it's a fantastic model. And I'm glad Rapido dipped their toes full time into the UK hobby. I look forward to whatever they have got planned for the future. They do bring out some great pre-grouping livery locomotives. So for me, it's going to be a biased thumbs up because I absolutely love the model. Sad, I know. Let me know your opinions on the model, and do you fancy one? And until then, I will see you in the next review, so please take care and goodbye.